Recently, I have found myself addicted to the 2000s medical drama House MD, a show which seems to be experiencing a bit of a revival with the advent of streaming platforms and the attention economy. The most boisterous, outrageous, and edgiest moments of the show make for excellent short-form content which is both unique and interesting enough to stick in the back of viewers' minds until they find themselves browsing for a new TV show and decide to give House a try. But the nature of House's second wind is much more ironic. 2 decades after the show's release, some of the ridiculous antics and quote-unquote solutions to medical problems seem even more over the top in contrast to a more modern, gritty drama like The Bear. The show has become more of a comedy. Don't get me wrong, many of the intentional jokes on the show are still hilarious and hit harder since so much of the edgier humor is considered out of bounds by modern standards.
I want the whole world watching you check out my ass and question my wardrobe.
Would it be better if I checked out your wardrobe and questioned your ass?
A little part of me.
There is no little part of you.
But there's a layer of ironic humor that doesn't feel intentional and seems more in vogue today than it would have 20 years ago. Yes, there's still moments that I hold my breath in anticipation or feel the pain of a character on screen, but in many episodes, I can't help but feel like not only am I laughing at the show, I'm laughing at the producers and the audience they made the show for. Certain episodes have premises that feel like a blatant insult to the viewer's intelligence. I mean, seriously, there's an episode where a 15-year-old girl convinces several adult men, including her own father, into having sex with her so she can exploit them and get ahead in the modeling world? Oh, and the fact ends up not being relevant to the medical case. You have to sit there and wonder, why the would another human being want me to even think about that, especially if it's not actually relevant to getting her better? Despite all that, I can't get myself to look away. If the joke is on the audience, it's on me. But don't get me wrong, I love this show. House is a car crash that you can't keep your eyes off of, and the intriguing, occasionally real connection between the characters seem to allow me to suspend my disbelief. The way I find myself both caring about the characters, but also waiting to see what insane nonsense the writers will try to top the last episode with, makes the show feel kinda campy. The world of House is one where the characters succeed not because of their intelligence or creativity or diligence, but because they fight nonsense with nonsense. Under all the fighting, PPTH is one big happy sitcom family that goes on wacky and zany adventures. And who wouldn't want to be a part of that? Getting to the end of House was an interesting ride, to say the least, but I feel like that experience of feeling at home that the world of House provides could be taken one step further, which is why I created The House Party, a one-night social event cross-hybrid between an escape room and a murder mystery to take the daring slapstick pseudoscience of House MD off the big screen and into real life. The premise of House Night was told to participants ahead of time. As up-and-coming doctors aspiring to find work at PPTH, they would come to the assigned location at the assigned time to meet House and attempt to impress him while working on a case. Once everyone was assembled on the big night, Greg very appropriately showed up late. He explains Cuddy has taken away his Vicodin prescription and that he needs the candidates to find old stashes in his office so he can keep up with his addiction. One short search later, House pops a few pills and explains the case. A 60-year-old coma patient found passed out in his yard. He explains some details on the patient and the fact that he took a blood sample earlier. One problem: he's mixed it up with some other samples. In ridiculous House fashion, he instructs the student doctors to each drink one of the blood vials, knowing, while most will taste like shots of liquor, one will have a distinctly sweet taste, like juice, and that will give away which sample came from the patient so the investigation can continue. Once the patient's blood was identified, House moved on to the second phase of the case.
Sorry.
A differential diagnosis. Doctors are given copies of the patient's chart, each which include some clues as to what could be wrong with the patient. Clues include notions such as House's ex-girlfriend, whose mother has it going on. Something House often violates. Someone House often violates. A healthy heart has this, but this word has none of the 5 vowels. Cuddy can't say this to House. As the doctors and House work together, They fill out more of the solution and find what next steps would need to be taken to identify what exactly had caused the patient's ailment. Together, they determine an MRI, toxin search of the patient's home, and genetic testing should get to the bottom of the medical mystery. The doctors are broken up into 3 teams, each with a map of the hospital and instructions on how to complete their activity. The MRI team is given instructions to use the hospital computer to conduct an MRI of the patient's brain. After locating the program that starts the MRI, they are prompted for a username and password. Once that information is entered, the MRI starts running and produces scans of the patient's brain. One doctor goes through each image, looking for anomalies, made up of a letter and number inside the patient's brain. When an anomaly is found, the second doctor marks the position of it on the MRI map. As the first doctor finds more anomalies, a path is formed through the map that eventually reveals the result of the MRI, which they then bring back to House. Fearing the coma was induced by a toxin, House instructs the doctors in the toxin team to search the patient's home. He gives them a list of 10 potential toxins that are likely stashed around the patient's home, possibly hidden from plain sight. Each toxin is brought to House, who makes a judgment about whether or not it is relevant to the case. The remaining doctors look at a grid of the patient's genetic code, trying to find any matches to potential underlying genetic causes of his condition. Once they find 3 of the codes in the patient's genetics, they go report it back to House. Once the doctors return, House assembles all the evidence and reveals what he believes is the killer behind the patient's case: moonshine. The particular damage to the brain revealed in the MRI, combined with the symptoms, could only have been caused by this toxin, and genetic testing ruled out any relevant genetic diseases. But there's 2 different poisons at play here: either ethanol, regular alcohol, and the patient had slowly drank himself into a coma over the course of many years, or methanol, implying a bad batch of the man's favorite liquor had put him into his current state. Of course, there's one quick way to determine which it was. So House asks if there's a brave doctor willing to try some of the moonshine. If they also show symptoms, it can be determined to be poorly prepared moonshine. Otherwise, long-term damage from alcohol overconsumption was the cause. Right before the doctor can drink, an alarm goes off in the room next door. The doctors hurry to deal with their patient, who has suddenly flatlined, seemingly out of nowhere. House determines the patient's lungs are filled with fluid, and they need to be immediately drained. The doctors use the purple suction straw to remove the mysterious liquid through the patient's mouth and stabilize the patient. But House knows this kind of damage to the patient's lungs indicates a more dangerous killer, possibly cancer. House orders an immediate exploratory surgery to see what's going on. The doctors put on gloves and masks before entering the OR to prevent the patient from getting more sick. And when the patient is opened up, it is revealed he has a tumor in his stomach. The doctors work together, moving pieces of his stomach around until they are able to safely remove the tumor. With the patient recovering, the doctors meet in House's office to recount the evening. On top of recognizing their effort, House reminds them that PPTH isn't like other hospitals, and that working for him is no ordinary job. He emphasizes his point with a particular musical number that sounds a bit like this. Last name House, first name Greg. I got pills in my pocket, Pain in my leg, the greatest mind in medical fiction, characterized by my wit and my addiction. Told my team to call, but only if they need me. Go back to my office to watch some cable TV. I only take cases that pique my interest, like teenage supermodel, statutory incest, foreman's a pill. You get the idea. Expect a studio-recorded version of the rap to make its way onto the channel some point in the near future. Real quick, last thing, I will also be doing a video breakdown of all of the props that I made for House Night and how I planned everything and came up with everything, and kind of a little bit more of a technical deep dive. So if you're interested in that, that will probably come out in a few weeks, just kind of explaining everything I did. Otherwise, hope you enjoyed. Have a nice day.